I am Kachiri.
And I'm Varun.
We'll be presenting our graph database project.
Let's start with an empty database. The first thing we do is loading the zones, beat, and their relationships. Then we relate adjacent zones together. As you can see in this map, zone 7 is not adjacent to any other zones, and beats start with the same number will belong to the same zone.
We then move on to creating the crime nodes as well as relate that to the beat nodes. While we are creating the crime nodes, we attach the crime number, the crime type, and the date on which the crime occurred as its properties. We then create the property type nodes and relate that to the crime nodes. In this diagram here, we can see that majority of the crimes occur in property type of house number.
We then create the neighborhood nodes and relate the crime to the neighborhood where it occurred in. Our final dimension, which is the date, it is represented as month in the property of the relationship and year as nodes.
In this example here, we are showing the crime node and we have larceny non-vehicle, which is related to 4 dimensions, which is also related to the zone it belongs to and the adjacent zone.
Now, let's switch to a big database so we have 5,000 records to run our queries on rather than the 100 records where we used to demo our creation script. Now, this database has already been populated by running this sequence of scripts. So the first query we're going to demo is which month of a specific year has the highest crime rate for each zone. So in the year of 2016, for zone 2 and 3, December has the highest crime rate, and for zone 4 and 5, April has the highest crime rate. With this answer, we can build on top of it to answer the next query, which is finding the zones that are adjacent and sharing the same high crime months. We can already see from this result, zones 2 and 3 are sharing the same high crime month, which is December, so are zones 4 and 5. But to answer this query, we first need to convert this result into a map from month to a list of zones that are sharing the same high crime month, which we've done here, and it matches the result from earlier. December has zones 2 and 3, and April has zones 4 and 5. Then we need to create an adjacency list which returns this map from zones to a list of zones that are adjacent to it. And we included the zone itself so that zone 1 is adjacent to zone 1 itself, which you will see why in a second when we go back to this final query that we need to answer. First of all, we filter out the month that only has one zone because for adjacency to make sense, there must be at least 2 zones that are adjacent to each other. If there are more than 2, all of them needs to be adjacent to each other. Then to do that, we will check for each zone in the list. It has to be adjacent to the whole list. So for December, zone 2 has to be adjacent to 2 and 3. So in this case, we check that zone is adjacent to zone 2 but not 3. So this is not a valid answer. But for zone 4 and 5, it will go and check that zone 4 is adjacent to 4 and 5, and zone 5 is also adjacent to 5 and 4. Therefore, this query should return zones 4 and 5.
Thanks for taking your time to listen to our presentation.